Hello, and welcome back to Blue Raven Thinks. First, I want to thank all of you for watching my videos and for subscribing to my channel. It really means a lot to me. In today's video, I want to discuss fear, what it is, its good and not so good uses, and what can we learn from it. Let's dive in. Fear is the oldest weapon in existence. Before swords, before guns, before laws, fear ruled. And it still does. It whispers in the back of your mind. Don't take that risk. Don't stand out. Don't try. Because if you do, something terrible might happen. As Susan Jeffers wrote in Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. Fear is a constant, but it doesn't need to stop you. But have you ever stopped to ask, who benefits from your fear? Fear is not all bad. It is a survival instinct. It kept our ancestors alive. A rustle in the grass. Was it the wind or a predator? Hesitate and you might live another day. As Gavin Becker notes in The Gift of Fear, fear is your ally. It's an instinct that is always present, keeping you safe. But today, in a world where most fears are manufactured, is it still keeping you safe? Or is it keeping you small? History is written in fear. Kings and emperors ruled through it. The Romans understood this better than anyone. As Erich Fromm, in The Fear of Freedom described, many people have a fear of freedom, preferring the comfort of control, even if that control is oppressive. The Roman Empire capitalized on this fear, understanding that to maintain power, you must make your people afraid, for it makes them predictable. In ancient Rome, gladiator games weren't just entertainment. They were a message, a spectacle of life and death, designed to remind the people who held power and who did not. As Fromm suggested, the spectacle was part of a social contract, where fear kept people obedient and unresisting. The games served multiple purposes. First, they were a distraction. When people are entertained, they don't rebel. When they are focused on blood and spectacle, they forget their own suffering. Gladiators fought and died, but the true battle was for the minds of the spectators. Second, the games reinforced fear. Roman rulers used public executions, brutal animal hunts, and forced combat to make one thing clear. Violence was the law, and disobedience meant death. And third, it normalized cruelty. When you watch suffering over and over, you become numb to it. The more Rome indulged in blood sport, the more its people accepted violence as a part of life. They stopped questioning it. They stopped resisting it. And the more desensitized they became, the easier they were to control. Fear wasn't just a byproduct of the games. It was the foundation of an empire. And today, the methods have changed, but the message remains the same. As Timothy D. Wilson notes in The Psychology of Fear, fear distorts perception. When we see a threat, our minds make us believe it's everywhere. The more we're exposed to fear, the more we're likely to believe it's true. The media has become the modern-day coliseum, feeding the public a steady diet of fear. Turn on the news. What do you see? Crisis, violence, scandals, threats. You are always being warned about something. The economy is collapsing. A new war is beginning. Society is falling apart. You are not safe. Why? Because fear keeps you watching, and watching keeps you hooked. A 2014 study published in the Journal of Communication found that people are far more likely to pay attention to negative news than positive news. Psychologists call this negativity bias. Our brains are wired to focus on threats because, in the past, that helped us survive. News outlets, corporations, and social media algorithms all exploit this bias. Fear-based content gets more clicks, more views, more engagement. Every headline is designed to trigger an emotional response: panic, outrage, anxiety. And the result? A society in a constant state of fear. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to fear-based media leads to increased anxiety, stress, and even paranoia. A study from the American Journal of Political Science found that people who consume more fear-inducing news tend to overestimate threats. They believe crime is worse than it actually is. They think the world is more dangerous than it really is. Fear distorts perception. It makes you feel powerless. And a powerless society is an obedient society. When people are afraid, They don't question authority. They cling to it. They look for someone to save them. Governments, corporations, and media outlets know this. That's why every crisis, real or exaggerated, is followed by a solution that requires more control, more surveillance, more restrictions, more dependency. A society gripped by fear will accept almost anything in the name of security. But what happens when you stop being afraid? What happens when you turn off the noise and start thinking for yourself? Fear loses its grip. Fear is a business. Think about it. Fear is one of the most profitable industries in the world. Insurance companies, pharmaceutical companies, the security industry, all of them thrive on keeping you afraid of what might happen. And few industries profit from fear more than insurance companies. They thrive on one simple strategy: make you believe the worst will happen to you. You could crash your car tomorrow. Your house could burn down. You could fall sick, lose everything, and be left with nothing. As Stephen Pressfield writes in The War of Art, fear often shows up as resistance, the voice in your head telling you to avoid action, to delay, to put it off. For insurance companies, that voice is the fear of loss. But the truth is, the more they make you fear the worst, the more they profit. But here's what they don't tell you. The fine print on many insurance policies is written to protect them, not you. They advertise peace of mind, but when disaster actually strikes, they look for loopholes. Technicalities, hidden clauses, and legal jargon allow them to deny claims, delay payments, or offer far less than what you paid for. These companies have mastered the art of selling fear and then withholding security. They bet on one thing: that you will keep paying, but never question, because fear is a powerful motivator. The fear of loss, of financial ruin, of being unprepared. But are they actually protecting you? Or are they just keeping you paying? Insurance is often sold as a lifeline, a necessity for protecting yourself from the unknown. But it's not the only option. In fact, there are alternatives that give you more control over your financial future, without the fear-driven premiums and hidden clauses. What if, instead of constantly paying into a system that benefits from your fear, you could invest in your own security, your own resilience? One alternative is to build your own emergency fund. The idea is simple. You save and invest money regularly, creating a financial cushion that can cover unexpected events like health issues, car repairs, or home damage. This takes discipline, but over time, it creates a sense of security that's not reliant on an outside company. Instead of fearing what might happen, you're preparing for it in a way that's fully in your control. When a crisis hits, the money is there. You don't have to wait for a claim to be processed or deal with a company that may try to minimize your payout. The power remains in your hands. But what if you can't handle a big emergency alone? This is where community support systems come in. There's a growing movement toward mutual aid and cooperative insurance. This approach involves pooling resources with others, neighbors, friends, or like-minded groups, to help each other when life throws a curveball. Rather than relying on a massive corporation that treats you like a number, you join a collective, where everyone contributes and everyone has access to help when needed. If someone's car breaks down or a medical emergency arises, the community comes together to assist without the profit motive. In fact, there are already modern examples of mutual insurance. In some parts of the world, community-based insurance models have existed for centuries. In these models, people don't just rely on an abstract company, they rely on one another. In the digital age, platforms like peer-to-peer insurance are also on the rise. These are companies that facilitate mutual aid networks, where groups of people band together to insure each other. The premiums are often lower because there's no giant corporation taking a cut, and the payout systems are designed to be more transparent and direct. This kind of community-based, decentralized approach not only challenges the insurance industry's monopoly, it also redefines security itself. It's not just about money, it's about trust, solidarity, and resilience. There's also another layer to all this: personal resilience. Instead of fearing what could go wrong, you can focus on developing the skills and resources that help you face challenges head-on. Learn about self-sufficiency, build a support network, Cultivate mental and emotional resilience. The more you invest in your own strength, the less you need to fear external threats. This proactive approach to life's uncertainties can give you the power to handle hardship without relying on a system that profits off your worry. The point is simple: you don't have to live in fear. You can create your own safety net by taking control of your financial future, nurturing your community, and becoming more resilient in the face of life's challenges. Instead of letting fear guide your decisions, let empowerment and self-reliance lead the way. Now let's talk about the pharmacy industry and fear, shall we? The pharmaceutical industry thrives on one of our deepest fears: the fear of illness, of suffering, of not being in control of our health. It has mastered the art of cultivating fear and, in turn, profit. It's an industry built on the idea that something is always wrong with us: our cholesterol, our blood pressure, our immune system. Consider this: every time you see a commercial for a new drug, what's the message? You could be at risk. Whether it's a heart condition, cancer, or a rare disease, you are reminded of all the ways your body could betray you. And that's where the industry steps in, offering the solution. Take this pill, and you'll be fine. Does the pill really solve the disease, or just masks the symptoms? The fear of the unknown is one of the most primal human fears. It's a fear that the pharmaceutical industry understands intimately. By advertising symptoms and highlighting potential risks, the industry turns ordinary, everyday experiences into something ominous. A headache? It could be a tumor. Feeling tired? Perhaps it's something worse. It creates a scenario where you're constantly living in a state of anxiety about what you don't know. As The Psychology of Fear by Timothy D. Wilson notes, the pharmaceutical industry capitalizes on this uncertainty by providing solutions, but only by emphasizing the potential risks. Pharmaceutical companies, in their quest for profit, highlight the potential worst-case scenarios, keeping people in a heightened state of fear and dependency. This approach doesn't just sell products, it sells peace of mind, a peace that requires ongoing consumption. The pharmaceutical industry's model often resembles a cycle of fear and dependency. You are made to fear an illness, and you are told that only a particular drug can protect you from it. But once you start taking that drug, you may find yourself caught in a web of side effects, additional prescriptions, and continual treatment. This cycle is what The Medicalization of Everyday Life by Szasz explores in depth. He argued that the medical industry, including the pharmaceutical sector, has transformed normal life into something abnormal. Everyday human experiences, like anxiety, sadness, or aging, are now viewed through the lens of medical pathology. If you're feeling a little blue, you might need an antidepressant. If you can't sleep, maybe you should take a sleeping pill. And once you're on that pill, you might be prescribed another to help with the side effects. This dependence isn't always about real medical necessity. It's often about maintaining a state of fear, because fear of not being healthy becomes a self-perpetuating cycle, where the drugs are seen as a lifeline, but the very industry that provides the lifeline keeps you tied to it. One of the most insidious aspects of the pharmaceutical industry is the fear it instills in people about not taking action. There's an unspoken message that if you don't take the medication, you're putting your health at risk. And this is amplified in a world that constantly tells you that you must be doing something to prevent illness or maintain your health. This kind of fear of inaction is pervasive. People begin to believe that if they don't take a pill, they are actively failing at caring for themselves. It's a fear of not doing enough, of letting the disease win, and of not being prepared for the future. Pharmaceutical companies aren't just selling a product, they're selling the notion that you must always be prepared for what could go wrong. This is explored in The Fear of Freedom by Erich Fromm, where he talks about how modern society has created a fear of freedom. People feel like they must follow the prescribed paths, whether through medication or specific behaviors, because if they don't, they fear losing control or letting something terrible happen. The rise of chronic conditions has also played a major role in perpetuating fear. Many conditions that were once considered a normal part of aging or a temporary setback are now seen as lifelong battles. This shift from acute to chronic conditions has been fueled in part by the pharmaceutical industry, which profits from the ongoing need for treatment. In The Corporation, the pathological pursuit of profit and power, Joel Bacon discusses how corporations, particularly in industries like pharmaceuticals, prioritize their profit over people's well-being. By labeling common issues as chronic conditions, they create long-term customers who rely on their products, often for the rest of their lives. This shifts the focus from prevention to treatment, and from cure to management. The result is a society that fears its own health, constantly questioning whether it's doing enough to prevent disease or manage symptoms. The message is clear. Unless you're medicated, you are not in control. So, what happens if we stop living in fear of illness? What if we question the narrative that pharmaceutical companies have built around our health? The key to breaking free is to start by being more aware of how fear is used as a tool of control. Start by asking, is this fear protecting me, or is it keeping me small? This is where true empowerment begins, by recognizing that fear is often manufactured, not inherent. You don't need to be constantly fearful of what could go wrong in your body. What you need is a more balanced approach to health, one that emphasizes awareness, prevention, and personal agency rather than medication-driven dependence. As Szasz argued in The Myth of Mental Illness, reclaiming control over our own health requires the courage to defy the systems that profit from our fear. By focusing on lifestyle changes, such as diet, exercise, and mental well-being, and by seeking holistic health approaches, we can begin to reclaim our health from an industry that profits from our fear. This doesn't mean dismissing medicine when it's truly needed, but it does mean rejecting the idea that we must live in a constant state of fear about our health. The pharmaceutical industry has, in many ways, made a business out of fear, but it doesn't have to define your health journey, because when you recognize that fear isn't always protecting you, but often holding you back, you'll find that you are no longer just a consumer in a fear-driven economy. You are someone capable of deciding what's truly best for your health, your body, and your life. By breaking free from the constant narrative of fear, you reclaim not only your power, but your peace. And in that peace, fear no longer has the hold it once did. Because a fearful society is a predictable society. And a predictable society is an easy one to rule. Why? Because fear makes people follow patterns. It narrows their choices, limits their actions, and makes them easier to control. A mind in fear is not a mind that questions. It is a mind that obeys. Throughout history, rulers, governments, and those in power have understood this well. If you can make people afraid of an enemy, afraid of the unknown, afraid of stepping out of line, you don't need chains to control them. They will build their own. Fear makes people crave security. And the moment people crave security more than freedom, control becomes effortless. Fear strips away critical thinking. When someone is afraid, they don't analyze, they react. That's why governments throughout history have created threats, real or exaggerated, to justify wars, surveillance, and restrictions. A society that is constantly afraid will accept almost anything in the name of safety. The more predictable a person's reaction to fear, the more they can be manipulated. Panic leads to submission, chaos leads to control, and control leads to obedience. But what happens when you defy it? What happens when you move forward anyway? Fear loses its power. The illusion shatters, and suddenly, you are free. Not fearless, just free. Because courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in spite of it. So the next time fear speaks, don't run. Listen. Then ask yourself, is this fear protecting me? Or is it keeping me in place? Because the moment you see fear for what it is, it can no longer hold you back. I feel like there is so much more to explore when it comes to fear, its role in our personal lives, in our societies, in the very systems we live by. We could dive deeper into how fear shapes our politics, our relationships, and our worldviews. We could unpack how it drives consumerism, influences our daily choices, and even how it affects the way we see ourselves. But for now, we'll stop here. Fear is a vast, complex force. And though we've only scratched the surface, the one thing we can take away is this. Fear is not something we are powerless against. It's a tool, a mechanism that can either protect or control us. It's up to us whether we let it guide us or challenge it. So the next time fear tries to speak over you, remember this. You have the power to listen, question, and move beyond it. Because the moment you see fear for what it is, it can no longer hold you back. For now, this is where our conversation on fear ends. But always remember, understanding it is just the beginning of taking back control. As always, thank you so much for watching my video. If you liked it, consider subscribing to my channel, sharing my videos, or liking them. Take care and see you in the next one.